This segment is proudly sponsored by the Low Vision Centre at Envision, providing specialist equipment, personalised guidance and friendly support for people living with sight loss, helping you stay independent every day.
Good morning to you all, it's Sean here with your Sports Report on Monday the 27th of July. Mike on controls today and Alan's joining in to help too. Start with the weekend's cricket. And St Annes stunned Lytham to collect their third victory of the Northern Premier Cricket League division last weekend. The second half of the campaign began with St Annes' 2-wicket win at Vernon Road, a result which saw the visitors lose top spot. Having opted to bat first on Saturday, Lytham were dismissed for 209, a total which saw 9 players in double figures, but nobody scored more than Xander Ayres 35. Jacob Wright and Carl Cross both made 33 after Lytham fell to 92 for 5, Adam Patel taking 6 for 73. St Anne's reply saw them reduced to 55 for 4 before skipper Harry Bergman led the fight back. He put on 86 with Patel, who scored 23, before falling for a 69-ball 80, leaving them on 177 for 6. However, Rory Urquhart with 24 not out and Alex Urquhart with 13 not out took St Anne's to 212 for 8 with 44 balls left. Netherfield are now 2 points clear at the top after beating Blackpool by 73 runs. After being reduced to 22 for 2, they rallied to post 256 for 6, thanks to skipper Ben Barrow's 89, John Hook with 86 and Nimesha Gunasinghe with 51. Khalil Patel took 4 for 76 for Blackpool, whose reply saw them all out for 183, as Ollie Wildman claimed 5 for 45. Having slipped from 51 for 1 to 64 for 4, Josh Bowen with 41 and Matt Taff with 27 and Ben Howarth with 29 provided Blackpool with some resistance. The Palace Shield Championship saw Fylde tie their match at Burnside. Tom Drum hit 114 not out as the hosts completed their innings on 243 for 8. Fylde's reply saw them needing 2 off the last ball, but Dan Smith with 78 not out could only manage a single, which left them on 243 for 6. In Division 1, Kirkham and Wesham lost by 81 runs against Longridge's seconds. Danny Wilkinson with 94 helped Longridge to 252 all out before Kirkham were dismissed for 171. That was despite Sean Bovington hitting 7 sixes and 5 boundaries in making 72 from 33 balls. And Fleetwood were the Fylde Coast's only winners in Division 2 of the NPCL, beating Barrow by 150 runs at Broadwater. They batted first and reached 289 for 8, a score founded on a second wicket stand of 232 between Andy Drake, who scored 102, and Mohamed Herrera with 137. Barrow's reply saw openers Drew Postlethwaite with 48 and Declan Tyson 32 put on 72 before Matt Siddall got to work. He dismissed both, taking the first 7 wickets to fall on his way to figures of 8 for 30, as Barrow were 139 all out. Thornton Clevedley's dropped to second bottom after losing by 9 wickets against Fulwood and Broughton. Thornton batted first at Illawarra and were all out for a 241, opener Josh Burrell with 80 top scoring. Fulwood and Broughton's scorched run 242 for 1 inside 37 overs, Ewan Mansford scoring 102 not out, and Simon Kerrigan 94 not out, sharing an unbroken stand of 216. Thornton were leapfrogged in the table by Carnforth, following their 27-run victory at Lytham. Jaco Benecki, with 58 not out, top scored in Carnforth's 234 for 8, during which Sahan finished with 5 for 63. Lytham were 207 all out with 3 balls to go, having been 104 for 6 before Sahan with 43 and Anthony Mulligan with 31 not out and Ben Saunders with 23 fought back. Will Smith made 105 in Great Eccleston's 229 for 7 against Preston, who responded with a 231 for 7. On to golf now, and 3-time champion Sherry Steinhauer says the AIG Women's Open has changed beyond recognition in its 50-year history. As the Women's Golf Spectacular celebrates its milestone at Lytham St Annes this week, who better to reflect on it than the American Steinhauer? The only player to lift the trophy twice on the Fylde Coast, Steinhauer's record of 3 Women's Open triumphs is equalled only by Australian Carrie Webb. The first of those victories came the first time the Women's Open was staged at Royal Lytham in 1998, and Steinhauer told the organisers, "The progression has been amazing, and I'm sure it will continue. The standard of the players is simply amazing, prize money keeps growing, and the courses on the roster are the best of the best. It really is a magnificent golf event." The field for the first Women's Open at Fulford in 1976 contained only 5 professionals competing for a prize fund for $500. At the end of this month, 140 players will battle it out for a record purse of £10 million. Steinhauer defended her title in 1999 at Woburn, completing her hat-trick 7 years later back at Royal Lytham. She admits the standard of play is at a different level 2 decades on, adding, "I feel very lucky to have won this tournament 3 times, especially twice at Royal Lytham. Women's golf has changed an awful lot since my day. You look at the players' routines these days with all the work in the gym, their diet and all the things like that. When I played, we all kind of travelled round together and had lots of fun. I had a sports psychologist and a swing coach, but today the players are travelling with a full team of people, a whole entourage. They're hitting the ball so much further than when I played. The level of the play is outstanding. We have some huge names in golf now, and they're doing so much to improve the game." And former Masters winner and Open runner-up at Royal Lytham St Annes, Adam Scott, has been honoured by the R&A for his impact on golf. The 46-year-old Australian was presented with the inaugural Royal and Ancient Spirit of Golf Award prior to this year's Open at Royal Birkdale, which saw him finish tied for 9th. The award has been introduced to recognise an individual who exemplified the spirit of the game on a global scale and displays the values, behaviours and traditions inherent to golf. It comes with Scott having played his 101st consecutive major, having brought up 3 figures at last month's US Open. He joined Jack Nicklaus in achieving the feat, which started in 2001 when he tied for 47th place in the Open at Royal Lytham St Annes. 11 years later, Scott was runner-up to Ernie Els on the Fylde Coast before winning the Masters title in 2013. Scott said, "I'm honoured to be the first recipient of the new R&A Spirit of Golf Award. As someone who has spent my entire life in the game of golf, it's so meaningful to be recognised for my impact on golf across the world, not only from a playing point of view, but for also upholding the values which are so integral to the sport. The award will be given annually to an individual, although in exceptional circumstances it may be awarded to a team or an organisation." And David Duval has vowed to return to the scene of his one major triumph when the Open is staged at Royal Lytham St Annes for the first time in 16 years in 2028. As a former champion, the 54-year-old American is entitled to an Open place until he turns 60 years of age. The 2001 winner said, "I'll be at St Andrews next year, and I'll be at Lytham, where I won, and then I'll look at where they're playing after that. If things hold true to the 5-year St Andrews schedule, 2032 will be when I'm 60. I'll walk up 18 on Sunday preferably, giving away my stuff, and be done." Focus now shifts to the 50th AIG Women's Open to be staged at Royal Lytham this week. The week begins with final qualifying at St Anne's Old Links on Monday, and the field includes the 18 who won through last week's pre-qualifying event at Delamere Forest. Those who missed out, including Royal Lytham's Fionn Richardson and Georgia Coughlin of Lytham Green Drive. On to fishing now, and anglers have been making the most of the settled cooler weather from our shores over the past week. Some specimen bass have been caught using both bait and lures. Other species landed have included sole, smoothhounds, thornback rays, weavers, eels, tope and plaice, with ragworm proving to the most successful bait of choice. Rhys Richardson went out with Graham Sim, fishing 2 hours before the low and the flood up. They used a selection of baits such as squid, crab, ragworm and fresh blacks. Graham had never fished the beaches at low water on our coastline, and with big spring tides upon us, meaning fast flooding gullies filling in behind, he wasn't the keenest to do it by himself. The fishing was fantastic for the whole session, as a variety of species were caught. They landed more than 20 fish between them, with smoothhounds, tope, pups, eels, rays, weavers, bass, sole, plaice and flounders all caught. Your correspondent chose fishing instead of football, which turned out to be a wise decision. There was some great sport, catching some fantastic bass as the sun shone, with Konishi shallow divers doing the job once again. Marine Beach is still producing some cracking bass, with local angler Steve Sielski landing a beautiful 6-pound 2-ounce fish in front of the Fleetwood Fishing Supplies store using their wild rag. On to rugby union now, and Mark Merrick is to become chairman of Fylde Rugby Community Foundation from September the 1st. He succeeds David Craven, one of the organisation's founders, who've been in the role since 2020. A former Russell School pupil and Fleetwood RAFC player, Merrick returned to the Fylde Coast in 2003 and later became a mini-juniors coach at the Woodlands. Having been a sponsor of the club's charity since 2020, he became a trustee in 2024. He said, "It's an honour to be asked to take on this new challenge, and I have big boots to fill. David has done an incredible job with the foundation since its inception. The foundation is in a strong place, and its reach into the Fylde Coast community is phenomenal. Looking to the future, I want to see the continued growth of rugby throughout our communities. If we see the young people who've been introduced to rugby by the foundation become dedicated seniors players over the next few years, then all our local clubs should thrive and grow." Craven will become vice chairman, and Martin Long, who currently holds that role, remains as a trustee. Sir Bill Bowman continues as president, and the other trustees, Dave Young, David Wiseman, Vicky Thompson and Tony Attard, stay in place. On to croquet now, and Fylde Croquet Club celebrated victory as around 100 players took part in the annual North West Championships at Southport and Birkdale. Players from across the North West and North Wales competed, with Fylde fielding teams in all 5 disciplines. Their efforts were rewarded with victory in the association short competition. In the all-play, all singles and doubles 14-point timed games, Captain Alison Broughton guided the Saturday team with Catherine and Philip Bass to top spot overnight with 2 losses, 9-5 and 6-5. 3 wins, 14-5, 11-8 and 14-7, and a draw at 9-all. Bowden were just behind at the halfway point, so the Sunday morning matches against them proved critical. Barbara and Robert Brent joined Broughton and won both matches 14-3 and 9-7. Although one close loss, 9-8, was to come, success was sealed with a 14-2 win against Bury. That followed on from the John Beach tournament held at Pendle and Craven Croquet Club. The handicap final between Fylde's Betty Bates and partner Lee Hartley was a nip-and-tuck game. Bates eventually won, pecking Hartley's front ball off, winning +4 on time and triggering a reduced handicap. Hartley won the low handicap runner-up trophy, accomplished his first triple peel. On to athletics now. Blackpool's Luke Minns was the winner as Wesham staged its inter-club race. More than 350 athletes from 7 local clubs competed, which saw Minns claim top spot after a battle with Preston Harriers' Rob Danson. Another outstanding performance came in the under-17 runners Archie Belfield, who was on the team's second counter. The provisional results indicate that Blackpool finished in the 3rd open team, alongside 4th place for the vets, men's 50s and ladies. There was also a 5th position for the female 40s and 7th for the men's 60s. On the roads, the Scorton Supper Run was the next race in the club championships. Simon Reason was Blackpool's first finisher, followed by Stuart Ford, Paul Wolford. First lady was Sophia Leonard. Next in was Daniel Higgins, ahead of third lady Basia Pavlicek, Chris Bluck, Laura Lawler. Brandon Willoughby was 45th, leading in Anthony Blight, Leanne Bluck, Suzanne Leonard and Simon Scarr. Completing the Blackpool runners was Karen Dunford, Paula Wright, Kevin Woods, John Reason and John Dunn. Blackpool's young athletes gave their best despite a low turnout for all teams at the lower YDL match in Carlisle. Alex Smith was one of the star performers after he did the sprint double in the under-14 boys 100 metres and 200 metres. Another was Esme Rutter for her display in the under-16 girls 300 metres hurdles, alongside her 80 metres hurdles run. Also in action for the under-16 girls was Hannah Warwick, who did the 100 metres, 300 metres and 800 metres. Emily Clarkson ran the 100 metres and 200 metres, as well as long jumping. She was joined by Dolly Zwatovich Williams in the 200 metres and long jump. Zena Sharp competed in the 300 metres and shot, while Lily Rose McMinnis was in the 800 metres and the shot. Georgia Allmark took part in the discus and javelin, with Olivia Windows also in the latter event. The 4x100 relay team finished in a time of 52 minutes 39 seconds. The under-16 boys were represented by Abdul Samad Abdul Karim, who long jumped to 5 metres 27. The under-14 girls saw Alana Dan race over 100 metres and 200 metres. Lacey Regan was also in the latter race. Juno Justins Nanchangi took part in the 100 metres and the shot. The shot competition also featured Grace Kirkham, in addition to her long jump of 3.79 metres. Elsewhere, Blackpool had 3 representatives taking part in the 5-mile Farmyard Summer Road Race. Andy Slater was the first of them to finish, coming on 52nd. Wife Rachel took 70th position, and Judith Green competed the trio. The Padiham Greenway Trail Races saw under-12 runner Alana McMinnis 4th in 8 minutes 27 seconds. Older sister Lily Rose finished 2nd in the under-16 event. And a tough evening saw Lytham St Annes Roadrunners ladies slip from pole position for the first time in this season's Inter-Club Series. As athletes recovered from the weekend racing, a depleted green team headed out to Wesham to tackle the 5-mile race. Lytham's female veterans 40s still lead overall after this 5th event in the series, but they face strong competition from Wesham Roadrunners and Preston Harriers to retain the title. The Lytham team finished 3rd on Monday night, with Joanna Gorney and Cass Chisholm 4th and 5th, followed by Mel Coff, Claire Taylor and Pam Hardman. Mike Toft led the way for the green team, finishing 3rd in 25 minutes 26 seconds, closely followed by 4th-placed Andrew Coley-Maud, while Jake Rodwell was the first junior and 7th overall in 26 minutes 18 seconds. Catherine Cardus and John Burtonshaw ran the inaugural Huxley 5-mile race in Cheshire. Catherine set a club female veterans 55 record with 33 minutes 10 seconds, while John ran strongly in the warm conditions to finish in 39 minutes and 48 seconds. Both also competed in the Preston Fast 5, while James Whittle recorded 17 minutes 32 seconds in the sub-18 minute race. Joe Holt represented the club at the midweek Scorton Supper Run, finishing in 38 minutes and 42 seconds. On to pre-season football now. And Blackpool couldn't have asked for a better signing than Karoy Anderson. The permanent addition of the midfielder has been applauded across the board by everyone invested in Bloomfield Road, and for good reason. What he showcased during a relatively short-term spell in Tangerine while on loan last season was impressive. In a matter of months, he went from looking like a young player just there to pick up minutes to someone bossing the centre of the park and taking charge. It's no coincidence that once Anderson found his feet, the Seasiders' fortunes changed. While his own performances improved, the 21-year-old's presence brought the best out of Jordan Brown as well. The former Leyton Orient man was able to find some consistency for the first time as a Blackpool player. Brown could just focus on his strengths, while Anderson assisted with the defensive duties, as well as providing more of a link to those further up the field. His permanent signing is a statement of intent, especially with such a long-term contract on the table. It's the perfect transfer because it completes the midfield puzzle. Not only does it benefit Brown, but it offers a certain amount of freedom to Leighton Clarkson, Albie Morgan and George Honeyman. There's a nice blend there now and a decent amount of depth for Ian Evatt. The only real decision to be made in that area now is whether they add someone else for that extra bit of security or back youngster Theo Upton to step up in the event of an injury crisis. With the attacking department also well stocked, it makes the focus of adding more bodies to the defence and in the wide areas a bit more narrow. It's pretty clear what's still required, but a couple of big boxes have already been ticked this summer. And Blackpool embraced a different form of training last week as part of their pre-season preparations. High Rocks has become a popular fitness trend in recent times, combining running and gym workouts. The Seasiders squad embraced a session last week But for head coach Ian Evatt, it was an exercise that was about building mental resilience as well as offering physical benefit. I think most of them enjoyed it, the Bloomfield Road boss said. It's nice to be challenged in different ways. Football is a huge mental test. For me, it's 70 to 75% is psychological, and you have to get over the barriers you're going to face. When you face challenges during the season, it's about finding that inner belief and resolve to go again and kick on. I believe everything is you against you, and you've got to make sure you win that battle. It's part of the winning process. And Blackpool were defeated 2-0 in their latest pre-season friendly against Barrow at Holker Street. Rakeem Harper and Innes Cameron were on target either side of half-time in a fixture marking the anniversary of the Bluebirds' first ever professional game against the Seasiders back in 1901. Ian Evatt's side remained low on numbers for their trip to Cumbria. Albie Morgan became the latest summer absentee before kick-off, while Dion Charles was forced to exit in the second half. The first real chance of the game fell Niall Ennis's way, with the striker's effort at the back post clipping the top of the crossbar on its way over. Shortly after, another opportunity arose for the 27-year-old. This time Andy Lyons played him through on goal, but once again he couldn't find the finishing touch, pulling his shot wide. Down at the other end, Bailey Peacock-Farrell's first test came from a George Walker cross, with a touch from Oluchi Nwankwo, requiring a save. Ollie Crankshaw proved to be a threat for the home side. After cutting in from the left wing on a couple of occasions, the 27-year-old was able to get his shot away, but was unable to find the target either time. His best chance came after a lapse in concentration from Zach Ashworth, with Peacock-Farrell doing well to recover in order to nullify the threat. Ahead of the half-hour mark, Ben Winterbottom was called into action for the first time, with a couple of saves in quick succession. A Caroy Anderson shot from the edge of the box needed pushing away by the ex-AFC Fylde loanee before Hayden Coulter's effort on the rebound proved to be catchable. That was followed by another Peacock-Farrell save, with Crankshaw steering a shot on target after arriving in the middle to meet a ball from Walker. After keeping Barrow out a couple of times, the Blackpool keeper was at fault for the opener, with a mistake while playing out allowing Harbour to beat him 1v1. The Seasiders made several changes just after the hour mark and almost got an immediate reward. A bit of space opened up for Killian Kouassi to run into, with an impressive challenge from Marcel Oakley, stopping the forward from releasing a shot. The ball then landed into the feet of Dion Charles, who saw his attempt saved by Winterbottom. The Huddersfield Town loanee was hit with a blow shortly after, exiting the action just 12 minutes due to injury. Heading into the closing stages, Cameron doubled the Bluebirds' lead with a glancing header from Ben Whitefield, beating substitute goalkeeper Franco Ravizoli. Forward almost bagged a second, placing an attempt on the half volley just wide after seeing the Argentine off his line. On to AFC Fylde now, and Craig Marn was pleased at what he saw when his AFC Fylde team lost 2-1 at Huddersfield Town in their latest pre-season workout last Saturday. The Coasters lost at Mill Farm, where Jack Morris's early goal gave them a half-time lead before Joe Lowe and Ryan Ledson were on target to secure victory for the League One club. Speaking after the game, Fylde's head coach, whose players visit Longridge Town on Tuesday, said there was plenty to be pleased about in their performance. I think if you break it into two halves, the first half was extremely good. The lads were fantastic. Some of the play, some of the patterns and the bravery, that was the ultimate Fylde away. Everything about it screamed our DNA and how we want to do things, and I couldn't be happier. Second half, when they made 11 changes, it's going to be difficult, and I look at their two goals, even though I don't want to be overcritical, it's set pieces or balls into the box. We're not being cut open, so I can deal with that because they're things you can work on. But even in the second half, the lads stepped up again. Huddersfield are an unbelievable club if you look at the size and structure, but we were able to get them moving, make them run and create chances for ourselves. For me, all in all, it was a really good performance, and it's minutes into the lads' bank. And AFC Fylde assistant head coach Alex Kenyon paid tribute to a younger Coasters lineup after pre-season victory on Tuesday. Fylde's latest workout before the new National League season saw them win 3-0 at Longridge Town. Danny Ormrod opened the scoring on the quarter hour finishing off Jack Morris's cross at the second attempt. Ben Jackson netted the second, just before the hour, after a corner wasn't cleared by the home team. Elvas Ashamari then completed the scoring on the 80th minute, 5 minutes after coming off the bench. Kenyon told the club's website, "It was a really positive night for us. The amount of minutes we were able to give to young lads, along with seeing Danny Ormrod getting minutes from the start and grabbing a goal for himself. The young lads were a credit to the football club. They've not worked on the shape we play within the first team too much, but they took all their information on board and it was a really strong performance. The likes of Max Fisher, Cullen Meadowcroft and Ben Jackson, who've had a taste of first-team action, showed their experience and maturity tonight, and they led the young lads through it, which is what you want. The young lads have shown tonight that if they can work hard, they can take their opportunity, and we saw last year that plenty of lads got their debuts and opportunities to impress." An AFC Fylde final home friendly against League One side Wigan Athletic was abandoned with just over 10 minutes of the game remaining, following a serious injury to a Wigan defender. The Latics trialist, who's now been publicly named as Nico Lawrence, blocked a Fylde cross when he hit the deck unopposed in what looked to be a serious injury, forcing the game to be stopped after the agreement of both teams. Gary Colwell's side were very impressive throughout the contest and held a 3-0 lead before the injury struck. 2 first-half penalties from Chris's gave the Ticks a healthy half-time advantage before a devastating finish from Fraser Murray added a third in the second half. Fylde once again started with a strong starting 11 in their final pre-season clash on home soil, with the likes of Corey Whelan, Dylan Allen Hadley and Danny Mayer all involved from the kick-off. But Wigan hit an early lead as the Latics frontman was brought down in the area by Max Taylor, giving Chris's the opportunity to creep his first spot kick past Zach Jones, who was inches away from keeping it out. Fylde had their own opportunity from the spot, as Cedric Main was dragged to the deck inside the Latics area. Dylan Allen Hadley looked to continue his fine pre-season form as he stepped up from 12 yards, but his effort was well kept out by former Accrington loanee Joe Walsh. Shortly before the break, the visitors were offered a gift of a decision from the referee, who for the third time in the half pointed to the spot, again penalising Max Taylor. Sis made no mistakes with his second effort, delicately chipping the ball down the middle to double the advantage. Fylde made a double change at the break, with the trialist earning another 45 minutes under his belt, whilst Danny Ormrod joined the action, initially playing off the right-hand side of the front three. It took just 8 minutes for Fraser to add the third with a fine finish, which crashed off the underside of the bar, leaving Zach Jones with no chance. There was a first Fylde appearance for a new signing, Aaron Drew, who was announced as the Coasters' latest recruit on Saturday morning after joining from fellow National League side Woking. But it was shortly after the game was called to a halt, as both sets of medical staff acted fantastically to provide Nico with the care he needed. Everyone at the football club would like to thank both sets of medical staff, and we wish Nico Lawrence all the very best in what we all hope will be a speedy recovery back to full fitness. Fylde will look ahead to 2 away trips to conclude the pre-season preparations as we head to Morecambe on Tuesday night before wrapping up the friendlies with a trip to Warrington Rylands on Saturday. On to the darts now, and Luke Littler defended his World Match Play title in sensational style, smashing Phil Taylor's tournament and final average records in the process. The 19-year-old beat 7th seed Gerwyn Price 18-9 in Blackpool to become just the 4th person to win back-to-back match play titles. World number 1 Littler finished the week with an average of 111.04, beating Taylor's record of 106.31 in 2010. He averaged 111.53 in the final, setting a new record as he betted Taylor's 111.23 against Adrian Lewis in 2013. Littler claimed £225,000 in prize money for winning the event and now has £3,143,500 over the PDC's 2-year Order of Merit. That's £2.13 million more than Luke Humphreys in second spot. It's been a crazy week, one of the best weeks of my life with the darts I've played, Littler told Sky Sports. It's been tough. The stats may look like it's easy, but when you're on this stage, and how hot it is, it's not easy. Price averaged 104.97 in the final, has enjoyed a successful week, climbing to 4th in the order of merit and reclaiming the Welsh number 1 spot from Johnny Clayton. Littler went into the final as the overwhelming favourite, and a stunning 167 finish in the 4th leg secured an early break to help him claim the first mini-session 4-1. That form continued as he led 8-2 and was averaging 114.74 with Taylor's record of 114.99 in the match play game in sight. His level dropped slightly in the next 2 sessions, but he still claimed both 3-2 to push it even closer to the finish line. He moved to within 2 legs with another brilliant 148 checkout, his 6th ton plus finish in the final, before a break and a hold saw him claim his 4th ranking title of the calendar year. The back-to-back world champion also hit 1280s in the final to set a new tournament record of 66, surpassing the total he set last year. The run is also continuing his sublime form in longer format matches. This win extending the streak to 29 successive wins in games with 20 or more legs. His last defeat over a match of that duration was when he burst onto the scene in 2024 World Championships and lost to Luke Humphries in the final. "Luke's 1 in a million. I threw everything at him," Price told Sky Sports. "He's fantastic for the sport. I wish he wasn't as good as he is. I would have won a couple more tournaments. I hope there's no one else like him coming through, because he's ridiculous." On to cricket now. There's an article in the Times about Jim Laker, the great test bowler. Taking 19 wickets in 1956 Ashes Test may never be beaten, but Mike Atherton asks what happened to the sweater worn by the off-spinner on that historic day. The short-sleeved England sweater, cable-knitted 3 lines and a crown, made by Payne of Godalming for Simpsons of Piccadilly, was slung ever so casually over his left shoulder as he left the field. In the photograph, it's impossible to tell whether England have won or lost, or whether he'd taken a hatful of wickets or none. In the mid-50s, you didn't parade your emotions. Exuberance and self-congratulation would have been frowned upon. So there he is, Jim Laker, walking from the field at Old Trafford on the 31st of July 1956, slightly ahead of the pack, which was the only clue that he'd enjoyed a good day. Trousers hitched up high, as was the fashion, sleeves rolled up, a short-sleeved England sweater dangling from his shoulder, looking to his left in the distance, but with a hard-to-interpret expression. Certainly, it didn't look like he'd just produced the performance of a lifetime. Behind him came his England teammates, Brian Statham, clapping dutifully to his left, Peter May, his captain, and Godfrey Evans, the wicketkeeper, to his right, while others brought up the rear. A bat protrudes from just behind Laker, so it must have been one of the Australian batsmen, maybe the not-out Ian Johnson, the captain, or Len Maddox, perhaps, the number 11, who became Laker's 19th and final wicket of the match. It's 70 years ago this summer that Laker took 19 wickets in an Ashes Test at Old Trafford, competing what must have been considered the greatest individual performance by an England cricketer. Among the most notable England performances in a Test are a quartet at Headingley, Ian Botham and Bob Willis in 1981, Graham Gooch in 1991 and Ben Stokes in 2019. But surely nothing can match Laker and those 5 days between July the 26th to the 31st in 1956 across the Pennines. What remains of that match and the performance? Of the players, only one is still alive, the remarkable Neil Harvey, who got an unplayable ball from Laker in the second innings, still going at 97 years old. Online footage is widely available, grainy black and white footage, with Laker simply hitching his trousers up every time an Aussie was snared in the leg trap or beaten leg before or bowled. The plentiful sawdust gave a clue to the pitch, which had been drenched by rain and had dried wickedly. Television can date a player, but Laker looks a proper bowler. Mickey Stewart, aged 93, father of Alec, is England's oldest living cricketer. He played with Laker for a number of seasons at Surrey and describes him as the best of a good bunch of off-spinners at the time. At the start of the summer, I spoke to him. He, Laker, was a typical Yorkshireman, Stewart said. He was very bright, and I had a strong friendship with him. He and Lily, Laker's wife, lived in Putney, and it was only 15 minutes away from where I was in New Malden. In those days, there was national service, so I did my 2 years after school and then got in the Surrey team that had won the championship 2 years in a row. I then played with Jim for 5 of the 7 years Surrey won the championship in the consecutive years from 1952 to 58. He was a very intelligent bowler, an artist really, big spinner of the ball, 6 feet plenty and strong. He liked me because I fielded close in all those positions on the leg side, in front and behind the bat. I caught loads off him. It was a different time, of course, because the batsmen didn't hit like they do today. When I was in close, I used to be able to hear the ball fizzing down, making a whirring noise. What else remains of that performance in 1956? Behind a glass case in the Lord's Museum sit the 2 balls Laker used, each engraved with the silver marker, and which were said to be among Laker's proudest possessions. After all, 9 for 37 and 10 for 53 in an Ashes test is worth cherishing. In the museum at the Oval, there's a scorecard signed by the players that was given to the club by a member, Roger Ford, on the 50th anniversary of the match. The MCC president at the time was Field Marshal Earl Alexander of Tunis, who presented Laker with a commemorative silver salver, which is in the family's possession still. Not to be outdone, Montgomery of Alamein also signed a £1 note to a fine Surrey cricketer, by way of congratulations, also in the family's possession. There is little else that remains from that tremendous performance. Laker's wife, Lily, died only 5 years ago, aged 102. How they met was a remarkable tale in itself, Lily having fled from the Nazis in Eastern Europe before the Second World War. Their 2 daughters, Angela and Fiona, are still alive and have lots of mementos of their parents, but little of the match itself. Patrick Marks, Laker's grandson through Angela, has his granddad's BBC Sports Personality of the Year plaque for 1957, which resulted directly from that 19-wicket performance. Laker is one of 5 cricketers to win the award. David Steele, Andrew Flintoff, Botham and Stokes being the others. And now, out of the blue, comes evidence of that short-sleeve sweater, slung ever so casually over the shoulder of Laker as he walked from the field. The story is an unlikely one, involving Michael Aspel, the former television presenter, now the same age as Stewart at 93, Ryan Tendushett, the former Essex captain, and Gooch, one of England's finest cricketers. Aspel had bought the sweater at auction after a match for the Lord's Taverners at Blenheim Castle on May the 25th, 1980. He wore it occasionally in matches afterwards, but then donated it back to the charity now called Scope, whereupon it was bought by Ray Cooney, a well-known West End playwright, actor and director. Years later, Tendushett moved in next door to Ray and Linda Cooney and was given the sweater by them, which he then passed on to Gooch, who was hoping to raise some money for it from the Professional Cricketers' Trust. A handwritten note from Aspel to Linda Cooney, who then asked for provenance of the sweater in December 2020, states, "Dear Linda, many thanks for your letter, which, although dated 30th of July, reached me 2 days ago. I'll have a word with the office. Although I have no written provenance, I can confirm that I bought that cricket sweater on the understanding that it had indeed belonged to Jim Laker and that he'd worn it during that sensational match in 1956 against Australia when he took 19 wickets. Yours, Michael Aspel." There are many remarkable footnotes and sidebars to Laker's match, not least that he had already taken 10 wickets in an innings against Australia earlier in May for Surrey. The ball from that match is in the Surrey Museum. That year, Brillcream gave an award, £100 and a silver cup, for the season's best bowling performance. After Laker's initial 10 wickets, Tony Locke had taken 10 for 54 against Kent at Blackheath, which Laker duly pipped with his 10 for 53 at Old Trafford. Locke, of course, was Laker's spin partner at Old Trafford and for many years at the Oval for Surrey, and it remains one of the more incredible aspects of the match that on a spinning pitch, a bowler as good as Locke could only take 1 wicket while Laker took 19. The match itself came to conclusion at 5:20 p.m. on Tuesday, July the 31st. There was a rest day on the Sunday when the umpire, Emrys Davis, long coat, black trousers and black hat, gave Australia's last man, Maddox, out leg before for England to retain the Ashes. There were no leaps in the air, no embraces, No punching the sky, just a dozen polite handshakes as I slung my sweater over one shoulder and jogged quietly up the pavilion steps, Laker later recalled. In the dressing room, there were cigarettes and Lucozade to celebrate. Laker was paid £75 for the test, reduced by £15 for the 2 matches he missed that week for Surrey. Later, the printing company De La Rue sent him a cheque for £190, a tenner for every wicket taken, and there were cheques from Bartley's and Littlewoods for £250. Laker left Old Trafford at about 8 p.m. in his Morris Oxford. A short time earlier, Don Bradman, covering the Ashes for the Australian media, and Alex Bannister, a well-known journalist at the time, had bumped into the great bowler Sidney Barnes in the car park as Barnes was leaving to catch a bus home. "No bugger ever got 10 wickets when I was bowling," Barnes reportedly said. If he was a little salty, it was understandable. Laker's 19 wickets had superseded Barnes' record 17 for 159 against South Africa in Johannesburg in 1913 for a haul in a single test. One of the well-known anecdotes about Laker's long journey home is that he stopped at a pub in Lichfield in Staffordshire on the way. In the bar, the regulars were watching the highlights of the test on the news when he walked in, but nobody recognised him. Laker had a pint and a couple of stale cheese sandwiches and went on his way, arriving home to his small flat in West Hampstead, he had yet to move to Putney, at about 2 a.m. Reporters were waiting for him, as the family photographs suggest. In one of those bizarre twists, Surrey were due to play Australia the next day at the Oval, and there was no suggestion that Laker would be rested. Having already taken a 10-4 and 19-wicket haul against them, Australia must have been sick of the sight of him. The scorecard shows Surrey taking a first innings lead, Laker taking 4 for 41, and Australia, in all likelihood, being saved by the rain. Stewart played in that match, leg before to Keith Miller for 16 runs, and recalled the matter-of-fact way in which his Surrey teammates reacted to Laker's 19-wicket feat the day before. "It didn't surprise us at all," he said. "Pitches were often prepared to turn, especially at the Oval. He was the best. I wouldn't say by a distance because there were lots of good ones around then, but he was the best. He was an artist. He had variation, control, was a big spinner of the ball and very shrewd." Laker's story is a fascinating one in the round. Born out of wedlock to a father he never knew, he grew up in a working-class Yorkshire family with 4 sisters for company and forged his papers so he could join the war effort at 17. He played football with Tom Finney in the war and was essentially a self-taught off-spinner, moving down from Yorkshire after the war when his mum died. He was a professional who fought hard for more equal treatment for pros in an era still dominated by amateurs, and had his MCC membership revoked, later reinstated, after writing Over to Me, which was critical of the authorities and the amateur-professional divide. He took 1,944 first-class wickets at 18.41 and 193 test wickets at 21.24 and remained a leading contender for any would-be all-time England Test 11. To my mind, he also became one of the very best television commentators with his dry wit and no-nonsense laconic style. With Richie Benno, he adorned the BBC's coverage for years, a voice of my youth. But it's the 19-wicket match for which he's remembered most of all. Those mementos, dotted around between the museums and family, survive it and remind us of a different, more modest and self-effacing time. The family were delighted to learn that the sweater will be brought to public attention again by Gooch through this article, and the sweater worn by one of the country's finest spinners, who 70 years ago completed the greatest performance in a test match by an England cricketer, or any cricketer for that matter. OK, that concludes this week's Sports Report. I hope you enjoyed these articles. So until the next time, it's goodbye from Mike on controls, Alan and myself. Bye now.